Good evening. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting of April 27th, 2023. The DRB meeting is now called to order. Please silence all cell phones at this time. The DRB meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6, and an AT&T UVerse Channel 99. The meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage at www.glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are also available on our city's website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. Roll call, Board Member Lockeroff.
Present.
Board Member Kasakian.
Present.
Board Member Welch.
Present.
Board Member Simonian.
Present.
And Chair Chagayan. Due to the fact that Chair Chagayan is absent, is there a motion for a chair pro tem?
I nominate Board Member Lockeroff to be the chair pro tem.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Board Member Lockeroff or Chair Pro Tem Lockeroff, if you don't mind moving, yes, to the head of the dais. Thank you. Next up would be approval of minutes. The approval of Design Review Board minutes from March 9th, 2023. And present were board members Lockeroff, Kaskanian, and Welch.
I've just been reviewing them. I'm sorry I didn't review them beforehand, but I think there's a disconnect between the records of decisions and what's showing in the minutes, because like it's showing Board Member Kaskanian as having voted no even when he was absent on some of them. So could we pull the minutes and do a review of that and then bring them back next time?
Of course.
Okay.
Let me just make sure, or if there's, you know what, since there's only, for March 9th, there was only one case heard, or are you referring to March 23rd?
The 23rd, but I also think that the minutes reflect the no's there as well, which are not, I think, are incorrect.
And approval of minutes. I apologize. Of course, I mean, that's obviously, I'm looking just quickly. There is no second. I do see that. So, so we will make note of that. And that would also be then for the March 23rd?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank
I
you.
apologize. I usually get my notes to you
No, that's
beforehand,
quite
but
all
I
right.
just didn't have a chance before this time, so.
We will double check that and bring both sets of minutes, both from March the 9th and March 23rd, back to you at our next meeting then.
Thanks.
All right. So with the agendas off the table, this brings us to Tonight, we do not have any cases under old business. We have 3 cases under new business. This would be for 1677 Arbor Drive, 757 Kavanaugh Road, and 3223 Kirkham Drive. Mr. Roger Kiesel has all 3 cases, so I can either turn the meeting over to Chair Pro Tem Lockeroff, or if you like, over to Mr. Roger
Great,
Kiesel.
if you can proceed. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Actually, my first applicant is not here yet, and I was in the process of emailing him. V, can you? Yes. Maybe, can you email Aris and see if he's coming tonight? Of course. Thanks.
Yeah, we could move on to the second
Sure,
case then.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then the PowerPoint is the second one in the line, V. Thanks. Which one is that? Oh.
Roger, would you like to go back to the first case?
Sure, Aris, you're up. Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet, but you're,
All right, so there you are.
all right. Thanks, Philly. All right, good evening, members of the board. The first item before you this evening is case number PDR 1915364. It's a review of a proposal to construct a 660 square foot addition, 1-story, to the existing 1-story, 3,064 square foot single-family residence. Oops. In addition, it is to, they will be demolishing the existing 3-car carport and building a 3-car garage in basically the same location in its place. That garage will have a roof deck. And then finally, they are extending the existing deck that is located adjacent to their garage and sort of living area. The residence is located on a 49,197 square foot lot, zoned R1R in the Florida District 2. I'm going to briefly go over the PowerPoint presentation. The location map is up right now. It is kind of a interesting, it's an interesting shaped lot. The address is on Arbor. It does have a little bit of frontage on Park Ridge, and it is accessed by a long private driveway. So it's an interesting site. Here's an aerial view. Again, you can see the street sort of on the bottom that it's fronting, and the house is sort of in the center of the site. It's hard to see the driveway in this view. There are trees on either side. These are, the top photo is actually a photo from the private driveway. And you can see the existing deck, the railings of that existing deck. The lower photo is taken from Park Ridge, and you really can't see much of anything from Arbor. Here is the site plan. The areas in dark are what's going on. You've got the garage, the living area addition, and then a little addition to the entry. Real quick, the elevations. This, the east elevation is what's most affected in terms of the deck extension, although you can see the driveway or the garage cladded in stone and the roof deck above. Some on-site photos, floor plans, sections, and landscaping. So let me proceed with my presentation. The site planning for the project is generally acceptable. Given the location of the site and the surrounding topography and existing development, the proposed project really won't have a significant effect on the adjacent neighborhood. Additionally, the site planning is really similar to the existing condition. They're just replacing the carport with a garage. They're extending the living space out a little bit, and they're extending the entry out a little bit. So site planning really is not impacted. The staff is suggesting a condition to provide additional buffering and screening of the proposed deck extension, which really is arguably the most impactful of what they're proposing. And we would suggest amending the landscape plans to include higher growing shrubs and canopy trees. And that is probably most visibly seen in the east elevation, and what I'm referring to is the landscape below the deck extension there, just bolstering it a bit so that it provides some screening and some buffer. Whoops. The south elevation also, particularly on the left-hand side of the screen, a lot of the right-hand side isn't being touched, so. Like site planning, mass and scale of the project is really appropriate. Given the topography of the site and surrounding area, the development pattern, what they're proposing to do really isn't going to impact the surrounding neighborhood. And the house really has a limited relationship with its surroundings. Staff is suggesting restudying the roof plan to better integrate internally all the different kinds of roofs. So, and that's, you can see that here on the south elevation most clearly. And this mouse is very sensitive tonight, I'm sorry. And then a little bit on the east elevation, but it's most pronounced on the south elevation. And then finally, design and detailing is also appropriate with some conditions. Materials proposed for the house include smooth stucco, fiberglass windows, metal railings, and tile roof. So in addition to the additions and the extensions, they are restuccoing, putting in new windows, roof as well. The materials that they've proposed are high quality, and as conditioned, staff is suggesting that the stone veneer, which is currently proposed just on the garage facade, be sort of distributed throughout the house. So I call this the front elevation, but you can see the new garage with the stone, and then the remainder of the house will be clad in stucco. Actually, the materials are also called out on the elevations. South elevation, the same thing, the stone cladding. East, and then west. So that was the third condition that we're proposing to suggest. That concludes my presentation. If you have any other questions, I can also go through the PowerPoint a little bit slower if you'd like. Otherwise.
Yeah. Do we have any questions?
I have some questions. Thank you. Is there a way, Mr. Kiesel, that you could depict the area of the deck that's being expanded? Because that wasn't clear from looking at the drawings.
Yeah.
Maybe on sheet 2.01? Is that
Yes.
part of your presentation by any chance?
If you look on the site plan, what I have up now,
Okay.
there is actually, let me go to the first floor plan. That's clear. So the dashed line that sort of bisects the garage is sort of the existing, where the existing deck is. The extended deck is the sort of the thicker line that it would be to the southeast.
Okay, so
Does that make sense?
I believe so. And so at some point, the new and existing decks kind of merge which occurs kind of on the left side of the drawing?
Correct.
I see.
Yeah.
And then the cantilevered portion, as depicted in some of the sections and elevations, there seems to be the cantilever, and then the retaining wall is really the supportive member, and then the deck is cantilevering.
Right, the deck will be enclosed below the cantilever.
Okay, and that was kind of my question. I figured, but that's not the way the sections were depicting themselves. Like, for example, if you go to, for example, 4.02 or 4.01, it seems as though the deck is just cantilevering, more so in 4.02, but not much, but I'm wondering
There is a
if-
little cantilever.
And I'm wondering, so between those, there is the concrete, pile that's going into the dirt, and then there's like a structural member coming out, whatever that post is. So is there screening proposed between those posts that come out of the ground?
Yes.
And what does that screening look like? Because I assume that's kind of part of the screening discussion as well.
I believe it's going to be the stucco.
Okay, so that was my question. So it's solid stucco?
Yeah.
Elevation 3.02 shows what appear to be the, almost like columns rising up that don't jive exactly with the section drawing, and it's not clear that there's wall or space
That was my question.
between those. Yeah, I think it's maybe a question for the architect, because I think fire is going to require some sort of covering there.
Right. And are they replacing, so for example, in 3.02, there is a depiction of kind of the guardrail that's being proposed. Is that guardrail circling the existing and the new deck? So all the existing guardrails coming out and is being replaced with the new guardrail throughout?
Yes, if you look on the south elevation, you see it just continue past the living room extension. All of that area is existing decking, and so it's all new railing.
Right? And in regards to the roof deck, where you had raised the point of the roof kind of being restudied, is the intent to, was there discussions, or is the intent to kind of have more of a solid, guardrail, a mansard, or like glass? Is that what you mean, or are you talking about like integrating it into the holistic design of the overall roof system?
I was referring more to a holistic look at the roof system, not necessarily that interaction where the living area and the
see.
garage abut.
So instead of like it kind of popping up, for it to be integrated in a sense. Okay. And all the windows you said in the house are being replaced? All of them with the fiberglass windows and sliders?
Yes. Let's see. With fiberglass. Yeah.
Okay. Those were my questions.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. And then we'll open the public comment. I don't have any cards for this particular project. Did the applicant want to come up and speak? Great. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, staff members. I don't have a
I'm
whole
sorry.
lot.
Okay.
Would you mind stating your name for the record and then
My
fill out
name
a
is-
speaker card?
sorry.
Thank you.
My name is Aris Artunian, and my office is in Macrosena. Going to give the address as well.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have a whole lot to add to the presentation. I can answer any questions that you have regarding the proposal. I think the intent of the roof is just to possibly connect the two hip roofs together. I don't think the comment was related to the flat roof, at least that's the discussion we've had. And staff has gone through a very, I don't want to say difficult, but very intense design development process with us. The project is nothing what it was initially, which was proposed. There was a second level that we shaved off it. The deck was coming out more, we pulled it back, all to make sure we get a favorable staff report or a staff report that recommends approval for this project. So I think we're more than happy to comply with the conditions or work with Roger to make sure we comply with them. Not very hard to do at this point. I just want to reiterate that. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have questions?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair. So, yeah, just in line with some of the questions I asked earlier, looking at that elevation that's currently up on the screen, is your intent to create a stucco wall between the structural posts?
Our intention was, from the beginning, was to leave it open, to not do any extensive grading, and to screen it somehow. Because we are proposing a structural slab, or it will be a structural slab, it won't be a slab on grade. And so we're more than happy to work with staff to come up with the appropriate screening. I know fire department is gonna have some issues with that. And I think the owner is open to either. I mean, I think rather leave it open and not grade it and fill it and build a wall. And just leave the caissons and screen them.
So let's say, you know, if you did leave it open, if you didn't fill it and kept your structural slab, one option is the stucco wall. Another option is what? Have you thought about some options for us to consider?
If we have to screen it, it's a wall. I mean, a landscaping in front of it. But if we're forced to close the gap between the caissons, we're basically going to build a non-structural wall and not backfill it.
Okay. And just as a confirmation, the intent is to demolish all the railings and replace it with new guardrail railings
Correct.
throughout?
Correct.
And as far as the roof deck is concerned, would you be open to considering like a glass guardrail system or a glass system up top versus a metal guardrail system?
I think we would be open. We did consider it. The maintenance of the glass guardrails was ultimately the reason why we didn't go with it, because over time it just becomes dirty and the dirt won't wash off, so you'll just have this kind of dirty thing around the roof and all around the sides of the deck. That was the main reason we went away from glass, because the views are amazing there.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I'm curious why you have the height of this garage so tall. It's 13 feet tall with a 12-foot clearance in the garage, and it just, the height of it doesn't quite match, you know, the lines of the existing roof line, and so it just looks a little odd to me, and I would think that it'd be a more natural look to have it lower down on the same line as the eaves.
Well, two reasons. One, we wanted to get a higher ceiling in there just for the purposes of vehicles that are going to go in there. The other reason was when we were doing a design development, we actually felt like when it was at the same level, it didn't read as well with the stone as if it was a little slightly above the rest of the roof line, so it defines that volume a little better. And I felt that the look is better, slightly higher than actually matching the roof line.
Mm. And one of the conditions proposed is to sort of redistribute some of this stone veneer around the house. You know, have you thought about how you might execute something like that?
Yes, we're thinking about applying that as sort of like a skirt around some of the house, just
Would you
up to
lessen
the
it?
sills of the windows.
Mhm. Would you lessen any of it on the garage, or would you keep it all on the garage and just add more?
We initially had thought about just wrapping it on two sides with the stone, but it just felt, design-wise, it felt appropriate to just wrap the whole thing and just say that, you know, here's the garage, here's the material on it. It made more sense architecturally. And the reason why I didn't add the skirts to be, in the beginning was I felt like just it being on the garage was appropriate enough because it's so much of it and I don't necessarily need it anywhere else. But if staff feels like we need to distribute it, we can add some of it to the sills of the windows on some of the sides that are visible.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
One more
a couple
question.
more questions as a follow-up to Board Member Walsh's questions and then what you stated. From what I could at least observe from the street, not much of the house is visible. So which portions of the house, you just said some of the house portions are visible. Which portions are visible?
The main portions that are visible are the three sides. What I mean visible is you drive up to it, you see it, you're on the deck, the house is there. The
No,
other
the deck,
side.
yes. No, but like the
From
deck,
from the
yes.
public street or the public avenue, none of it is really visible.
Right, that was my question.
Right,
Okay.
so the visibility is really just for the owner and for the guests who will enjoy it.
Understood. And the last question I have is, you said because of the height, I'm a car guy, so I'm asking, this is the idea to put lifts in there and to have stacked cars?
Potentially,
Got it.
potentially.
That's why the
yeah.
height, you need the height, okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you. If there are no other questions, then we'll close the public portion of this and open our deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Would you like
One
to
second,
start?
please.
Oh,
Let me
sorry.
check and see if there are any callers. We have no callers. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll close the public portion and open it up for deliberation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for fielding our questions. I think overall, you know, replacing the carport with a garage, especially one that isn't really visible from the public area and isn't an issue because of the sensitivity of the site plan in regards to not altering it. And so as far as the direction of site planning and the what's being proposed, I have no issue with. I do think the fire department is going to want a fire enclosure under the decks anyways. And so some sort of a non-structural fire-rated system to go between the piles is probably what you're going to end up having to do anyways and plan check. When we've looked at this for different projects, I mean, that's either some sort of a cementitious siding, you know, product or stucco, or some sort of a stone thing, which is the heaviest and the most expensive. Some sort of a, if we as a board decide to go down the stucco route, then some sort of an earth-toned stucco finish that would blend in with the surrounding hillside, and as staff is already asking for, some sort of a buffering landscaping plan, especially some crawling, if there are some appropriate water-tolerant clinging vines that might be appropriate as well to kind of cover that lower level. I think it's a good idea to replace all the guardrails, so that's great. There'll be some harmony, especially because that's really the only part that's visible from the street. In regards to the garage, I completely sympathize and understand the height, because if you're putting lifts in there, it's kind of what you want to do. I think one idea would be just having glass railings as on the roof deck to kind of minimize the mass. That's one idea. If we, as I said, have a solid parapet, that's going to increase mass. And then a mansard roof kind of a thing decreases the area up top because, you know, of the pitch of the roof and what's left over. And so, as what you recommended, Board Member Welsh, of lowering the heights, probably the most proper way to blend it in, but I absolutely understand and I support their cause of wanting the height, you know, for their cars, and especially if it's not visible, so I have no issue with the height. But I think a good trade-off might be to try to minimize that bulk as much as possible with glass railings. In regards to the stone veneer, if it's not visible from the street, I'm kind of looking at this as, you know, something as we would assess on the rear of a house, not as important from my point of view, because of the long flag lot. So anybody that's really going up there is really going up there for the house. And so that's not as big of a concern for me. Besides that, I think staff has done a good job, and those were some of the things I would reiterate. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to go?
I largely concur with Board Member Simonian. I think that because this property is like completely cut off, it's not visible to anybody. I had to actually park my car and walk a long ways to actually get even any kind of a peekaboo view of it. So I concur. I'm not so fussed about, you know, the specific details here, because they're really just not going to be that visible. I do think that if the height of the garage, you want to keep it that way, you know, it might be a good idea to do some, you know, parapet roof kind of structure, at least on part of it, to help shield it. But, you know, it's you know, I'll hear other people's opinions on that. And from a design perspective, I do think that bringing some of that stone cladding throughout the house, just for consistency's sake, because right now it looks very disjointed. And I think having some element of that stone, even if you leave it all on the garage, but bringing some of it into some elements of the house would improve the design, just from a purely aesthetic standpoint. So I recommend that. I concur with Board Member Simonian on the coverings for the under the deck areas to be in a very, you know, natural color material. Recommendation for climbing vines or things like that is a good idea. So those pretty much are my comments. So otherwise, I generally concur with the conditions as proposed, and look forward to whatever debate we have here. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, overall, I like the design of the house. I agree with Board Member Simonian in regards to incorporating the glass railing on the top to help, you know, make it a little bit lighter. But other than that, I do support the project and vote yes on it.
I concur with my colleagues. I support this project. It's well cited. It's really out of the public view, but I do agree with staff's recommendations for restudying the roof line, and I also sympathize with needing that height for the garage. So maybe finding another method. I do like the idea of glass railings at the top to help minimize the visual impact of that volume. And yeah, no, overall, I think we all sound like we're in consensus. It's just a matter of which what we would like to have in terms of conditions. So what I'm hearing is the glass railing a condition that we'd like to add. It sounds like we're all on board for that. I don't know if you want to read back all the conditions that we've come up with so far. Oh, sorry.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
It sounds like the landscape condition in the staff report is very similar.
Roger, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to,
Sorry.
microphone, thank you.
Landscape plans shall be amended to provide additional buffering and screening of the deck extension. The amended plan shall be reviewed and approved by staff and include higher growing shrubs. And then I inserted climbing vines and then canopy trees. The second condition, I'll just read it. The stone veneer currently proposed only on the garage facade shall be integrated into the entire house. Glass railings.
There was some
I would say on
difference of
that,
opinion
yeah,
on
on
that
that
one.
particular item, I wanted to clarify it with everyone else.
I concur with it. I think that the design would be helped by it, so.
I do as well. Just wanted to check in with everyone to see how we feel. What, how about you?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I could live without it, but if that's what the board's going with, because the whole house, all four sides, I mean, maybe the entrance side.
Well, the applicant talked about just doing a little band at the base, foundational or something like that, or.
I'm fine without it, but I'll obviously support it if you all decide that's the direction you want to go.
Okay, The
And-
next condition, glass railing shall be installed at the roof deck.
Right.
Then the walls underneath the deck extension shall be finished in an earth tone stucco or similar treatment.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last condition that maybe is a little bit, we may need some more direction on is restudy the roof plan to provide for better integration, internal integration. There was,
Right, there were different ideas on that.
I didn't really see, well, I don't really see a way to do that without really either lowering the height, which we talked about, or redesigning, the garage structure itself.
Right,
And so I felt as though by adding the glass guardrail, we were minimizing the top heaviness of it.
Right.
And so I'm okay not having that condition.
and honestly, something that might help is if the top part of the garage is stucco, for instance. You know, if that, maybe we're kind of bring down the stone veneer, it's like a band down low on, that continues into the house. Maybe there's a better connection that's achieved that way. It could be materials, yeah.
I mean, a natural way to do it would be to, a natural way to do, would be to have the stone, let's say if we're looking at the elevation we're looking at right now, the stone veneer would be just on either side of the garage doors.
Right,
And maybe not even all the way up to the garage header, and then there would be like a wood lintel up top to kind of give it that look, that carriage look. And then, of course, have stucco above it, like you're saying, much lighter than the stone, and that stucco would kind of match the house. And at the same time, if we're adding the stone veneer, now it's just a band, going up to the sill of the house. Now you've kind of created a holistic language to it.
right. So,
Makes sense to me.
so maybe rephrasing that, the stone veneer section to talk about integration of materials to make it seem more seamless with the rest of the house.
Just to clarify, are we talking about more or less a wainscoting at parts of the house that would then come to the garage, wrap around the garage? So just the columns between the doors would just come up to whatever level, there'd be a cap on
Correct,
that, and then stucco above?
correct. That's what I understood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and a wood lintel, or is that optional, or?
I feel like the wood lintel is optional personally, but I think,
Yeah, it would certainly add to it, but no
But,
one's
yeah.
seeing it, right?
right,
So
right,
It's
one
also
of those
not part of the vocabulary of the rest of the house, so it might be.
right. Yeah, I would put that to the discretion of designer. I
That'd be a
think.
consideration, maybe.
Yeah, consideration, yeah.
so what I'm hearing is maybe eliminate condition number 2 and instead relying on Jay's understanding of
No.
the stone veneer at the base that wraps around the house as well as the garage.
Correct.
With a cap, and that's enough integration and not worry about the roof.
Correct, yeah, and the also the glass rail at the top, I think, is going to help.
Right.
Yeah, right, both of those things.
Right, okay.
It may not fully wrap, we'll just kind of look at the elevations and see if it makes sense to do that or to have breaks.
Correct.
Let me see if I had written down any, I didn't have anything
I think that
else.
was it. And do we have any motions?
Any what, I'm sorry?
Motions?
I'll move to approve the project with the stated conditions.
Second?
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with the 5 conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Kaskanian,
Yes.
Mr. Welsh,
Yes.
and Ms. Lagraff.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
thank you. Okay.
I'm wondering, is the air on in here? No. Yeah.
Yes. All right, so,
I was about
Yeah,
to send you an email. I'm like, I'm just going to say it.
My computer, the mouse froze. Okay.
okay.
Vilia?
Vilia, should staff start?
It's-
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my mouth, there it is. You're actually controlling it, I think. Yes, okay. No, I think it's working now. It was frozen. All right, good evening again, Madam Chair, members of the Design Review Board. The next item before you this evening is case number 463-2022. Thanks. It is a review of a proposal to construct a addition to an existing one-story single-family residence. The original house was built in 1954. Specifically, the applicant is proposing to add 35 square feet to the first floor. He's proposing to demolish 73 square feet on the first floor and then add just over 1,200 square feet onto a new second floor. After the proposed addition, the house will be just under 2,700 square feet. The site is zoned R1R with a floor area ratio District 2. Currently, the site is 18,370 square feet and consists of 2 lots. The location map is up right now, and you can see the 2 lots, 121 and 122. Part of the reason why the applicant is proposing to demolish a portion of the existing first floor is so that the house will comply with setback standards for the lot 122, which is currently, in which the house is currently located. The demolition will enable the setback to be 5 feet, which is what is needed to comply with code. The existing 2-car garage will remain, and also as part of the project, is a swimming pool proposed north of the house. Let me just go over briefly the PowerPoint. This is an aerial view of the site. Sort of a street view of the existing house. As I said, the garage remains the same. The entry, which is sort of, you can sort of see it right by the American flag. There is a small part of that area that's being added, so the entry basically stays in the same place. It is being expanded a bit. The site plan shows the existing garage remaining the same. The addition is shown in green, and it's hard to delineate where the part of the house is being demolished, but it's really kind of on the right-hand side. This is the front elevation of the house. The back elevation, east elevation, and then the west elevation. Some renderings. The floor plan. Again, the demolished part is on the left side. You can sort of see a lightened outline of a room with what looks like some French doors that will be demolished as part of the project. This is the new second story. Roof plan, some section drawings, landscape plan. Landscape plan, you can see the new pool that's being proposed at the rear of the house. Some materials. And then I'll go back and start the report. Site planning for the project is generally acceptable and remains very similar to the existing conditions. While expanded with proposed retaining walls, the front and rear yards will remain minimal in size just due to the topography of the site. Staff does suggest 2 conditions related to site planning. The first is that the proposed project be revised such that the deck space in the front of the house be reduced in area. I spoke about this in the staff report. Let me see if we can see it clearly. Well, it's not all that clear, but the first floor floor plan, in front of the house, they are proposing a new deck, and staff needs to make sure that at least 50% of the front yard contain plant material and complies with code requirements. It looks like because of that deck extension, it is exceeding, or it's not quite at 50%. So that's one of the conditions, is to reduce that deck so that we have at least 50% landscaping. The second condition includes providing landscape plans, concentrating on areas adjacent to the retaining walls that include plants which will soften the appearance of those walls. So like site planning, the mass and scale of the project is generally appropriate. The project steps with the topography of the site. The existing garage remains 1 story, and then as the topography slopes up, the house slopes up. Also, the front elevation, there are areas where the second floor steps in from the first floor, which is consistent with what we want to see in the hillside design guidelines and follows the topography. The horizontally oriented project is balanced by the vertically oriented windows and siding, and successfully reduces the appearance of mass. The entry to the residence is really in the same location as present and not monumental in nature. And then staff does have a condition suggested that the roof element above the staircase be changed to a hip configuration to provide a relationship with the other hipped roofs on the house. And what I'm referring to there is on the second floor, you have 3 windows. That's the area of the staircase. So include a hipped roof in that area. Then finally, design and detailing are also appropriate as there are high quality materials proposed. Additionally, the only balcony proposed on the house is facing the front, facing the street, and that is located just to the left of the staircase. You can see it on this elevation. Staff is suggesting that the width of the driveway be reduced to the minimum amount necessary for ingress egress. So let me show the slide of the materials. The materials are here, and steel casement windows, copper downspouts, those sorts of materials. And then the landscape plans sort of depict where the driveway is, and are concerned that if we could reduce it a bit just to allow ingress and egress to the garage and to the backyard, but reduce it as much as possible. That was our third condition. So again, staff is recommending approval of the project with the conditions contained in the staff report. Are there any slides you would like me to show again, or?
Are there any questions or slides you want? Mr. Simonian?
Mr. Keyson, when you were referring to the front deck and the 50% landscape ratio, it looks like there's a retaining wall or like a garden wall being created, kind of running parallel with the street, and then behind it, they're filling up with some sort of dirt or some sort of a deck, as you're calling it. Is it being retained by a garden wall? Is that what we're talking about?
If I'm understanding correctly, the garden wall will be where the proposed new decking ends.
Correct, okay. And then let's say if they do permeable pavers, that would count towards the 50% ratio, I believe, right? So has discussion occurred as to what material that is?
It's my understanding this is decking, it's not permeable.
So we could ask the architect on that.
Yeah, I don't think we would count all of that area if it was permeable as live landscaping. So,
The garden wall's allowed because it's cut rather than fill?
I believe so. We've had some discussion on the front yard, so.
Are there any other questions? Okay, great. Well, then, we'll open it up to the public comments then. Let's see. I'd like to call the architect up. And please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Alan Malikian. I'm the project architect.
Welcome.
So thank you, Roger, for giving the presentation. And I wanted to kind of clarify some of the assumptions and some of the conditions that was placed in. The intent, first of all, we are transforming the existing ranch home to a modern farmhouse. So the details, everything that we've used, steel windows, copper downspouts, everything has to be appropriately done, and which will be selected. As far as the conditions are concerned, the front deck, the deck itself is kind of, should not be used as a deck. It'll be all landscape, it'll be all graded area. So there is not gonna be any kind of a solid or a concrete or impervious. So it will be open, and if we end up using DG or other types of, but it will be all landscaped area. The intent is to kind of use what's there in the front and not actually create a flat concrete, and so you can call. So if I have to kind of go out on a limb, it'll be 100% of the front will be landscape. So that's for sure. As far as the side retaining wall, side retaining wall right now, it's actually the hill is in a very odd diagonal angle that it's impossible to kind of utilize the full width of the garage. The idea is that to utilize the 25-foot radius, the arc radius, and we've kind of created that, and we've used that as a basis of creating the retaining wall, cutting back the hill and creating some retaining there so that it's a little bit more maneuverable and we can access the garage itself. This site plan right here, the dark shade on the right side or on the east facing, that's the area that we're proposing to remove from the building to create and maintain the appropriate setback from the existing property line that is there between lot 122 and 121. Again, the contour or the shape of the retaining wall in the back is, again, based on there's the sole condition that building and safety dictates that the retaining wall against a habitable space has to have at least an H/2 or whatever the sole condition allows. In this case, it's a little bit less than the 30 or the 15 feet. It's actually 13 and a half foot. And the shape and the contour is based on the actual contour of the hill itself. So that's why you get this irregular shape there. And we wanted to maintain the allowable height that we're, but other than that, I believe there's some neighbors here, friends, and they have some questions. I try to answer them, but I'll be more than happy to answer any other question if you have any. One more thing, as far as the hip roof over the, so we did receive that comment from staff, and I did do the massing, actually. We chose to come back to this because I put two rules in this design that we were adding. The upper part being that it's more of the modern look, so we went with the gable roof, which all ends of the roof that is being added on, it's all consistent. The hip roof, which is the only existing parts of the roof that we cannot change, I would change it to make it a gable, but if we do, then we would go over the 50% rule, therefore it's basically a brand-new building. So that was the intent, and creating, it looks kind of odd in that, but when you look at in an angle, standing at the corner of the driveway and looking up, all the roofs on the top are consistent, and creating that hip roof, you create a kind of a different effect than the rest of the upper added section versus the lower. But again, I'm open to suggestion, and it can go either way. There's no really a loss of square footage or anything. It's just more of a personal aesthetic approach that we did, and I just kept it as that. Other than that, and that's it. So if you have any questions.
Thank you for your details. Do you have any
Sure,
questions?
yes. I hear what you're saying about that gable aspect. I appreciate your sharing that opinion. One question I have about that front section, because you've got a lot of lighting called out on that front facade there. Is the intent that you need that lighting to have it a patio space, or?
There's no actual needed lighting. It's just more of aesthetics, and I'm a little bit more cognizant of the actual lighting at nights. So rather than creating some dramatic effects to the building itself, the other option is that there's only 4 lights that we've put in there. The only other option that I would suggest, if I remove those lights, I would put ground up lights, that it will create a little bit more dramatic effect against the building itself. But yeah, and there's no set. It was just more of,
Okay.
we did some night views and we added some lights, and it came out to be pretty interesting, yeah.
And I want to ask about these sort of barn door kind of shutters. Are those functional shutters where that will?
No, they're not. They're more decorative.
They're more decorative, okay, because am I
more decorative.
seeing it correctly, that it looks like a barn door kind of
It would be
effect?
functional, but it would be placed permanent. I mean, it would be locked in place. It would not be, I mean, we will have a track on the top. It would have its own functioning, but it would be locked in place. So
Okay.
it's not like they would go out and we're not going to have any storm. Well, I shouldn't say that. We just did, so.
And can you elaborate why you chose those 2 window groupings to have the shutters, because they're nowhere else on the house?
So, it was a more of a again, it was just more of an aesthetic. A lot of wall section that was left, and I just wanted to kind of balance out. Again, there's no particular reason for them to, I didn't kind of repeat everywhere in the house. It was just more of kind of emphasizing that entry in the corner. But that's basically it. And I don't have enough room on other walls except the corner at the bottom. And if we do choose that, but that's a pretty large one, and it's a 3-section window, so you can't really add those and bring it all the way to cover all the 3-section windows. So that's the only 2, and then the 1 over there.
And the big sort of gap, or the big blank space there.
That's a set of stairs that is actually going up. So if I put a window there.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying it's screaming out at me for some kind of a trellis structure or something to grow there. So to have landscaping there.
It would be interesting, but I would be in the setback. So we're right on the front setback. So it would be very difficult for me to put anything unless planning allows me to add, something in the front setback. Because there's a diagonal. If you look at the site plan, you can see the outline of the 15-foot setback that we have to maintain, and putting that structure, other than roof overhang that I can't encroach more than 30
Right.
30 inches, I believe.
Yeah, I was just thinking something attached to the
yeah.
wall, really, frankly. And then I guess my last question is more out of curiosity. Have you thought about how you're going to deal with the export for all that excavation?
How we're going to deal with export?
Because the house is basically left intact, right? And you
Right.
don't have a lot of space.
So there will be an export. It is. We do have the soils report. We do have a substantial bedrock. So it would be quite a jackhammering some rocks out there. But there is a lot next door, which the property line is there.
Should there's some access that can be gained through there
There
for
would be access,
if you
correct.
need to bring in a
Correct.
bobcat or
Yeah,
whatever you have to
yeah.
do for.
And we are right at the end of almost a cul-de-sac or a large area. So excavation-wise, I don't see any problem as far as, and it's down the street, and it's not the street above, which we would have other issues. which is on
Okay.
Bullock, yeah.
All right, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay. Next, I'd like to call Mickey Pargasian. Or sorry, I pronounced your name wrong. I apologize. Can you state your name for us? Thank you.
Mickey Parsegian,
I
yeah.
complete-
Parsegian is fine.
Okay, thank you.
So my cousin Maral and I are here. We live on the two adjoining properties. She has one home and I have one home. So in terms of her home, she's on lot 241, which is right behind this subject that's being developed. And I'm in property 120, which is to the right and up. So we're both on Bolig, so we're on the top portion. We're not here to intervene, and our intention is not to interfere or stop this project, but we just wanted to make sure, and I think we got some clarification from Alan today and also from Richard, that lot 121, which is now going to be split off, later on is adjoining on the Bolig side, has access from Bolig, and has access from Kavanaugh. On the Kavanaugh side, it's 80 feet wide. On the Bolig side, it's 55 feet wide. But we got confirmation that if they develop 121, that the home will be built on the Kavanaugh side, not on the Bolig side, because that's like a 40-degree slope, and Bolig is very tiny, and we just wanted to put on record that we don't have any intention of not having him build. We're okay with it, but we just wanted to confirm that it's going to be on the Kavanaugh side as opposed to the Bolig side. That's why we came, okay? And I know she and I were also a little concerned about developing on hillsides because there's another home on Harrington. I'm sure you guys might have already known about it. It's been going on for about 7 years. And it's been a bit of an eyesore because it's still not done, and lots of water has been pouring into our neighbor's pool down below and a lot of runoff. But we just wanted to make sure something like that is not going to happen. But I think with Alan around, we're not that worried. Thanks.
Well, thank you for your comments. Unfortunately, some of those items aren't in our purview, but I'm really glad that you got the answers that you needed from staff. So thank you. And, oh yeah, you can come up to address that.
Again, Alan Malikian, project architect. Again, I want to go on record so everybody
Right.
is comfortable. We did do the study. Mickey was correct. We did do the study, and the upper section of the lot 121, the width is narrower. So to be able to develop as a brand-new home with the 10-foot setback, it essentially creates a very difficult building to be created and be useful. The lower portion, which is already leveled area that we have, minimizes the grading as well as the width that allows us to be able to develop. So we've done the study, it's in the works, so it will be coming as near future, but it would be on the lower portion of off of Kavanaugh. As far as another concern was that the retaining wall in the back, I assure that the elevations that we are dealing with the neighbor, there's about a 47 or 48-foot elevation difference, so there is not going to be any privacy in a sense of the owner looking up. Actually, it'll be the other way around, but there is a 48-foot elevation difference from the new deck to the existing deck. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Virginia Voskanian.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Virginia Voskanian, and I believe I'm on lot 23, immediately to the right of the property. So I just have a few concerns because I've lived there for 2 years now. Kavanaugh is a very small, narrow street, meaning we only have parking on one side, and there's hardly any parking now most of the time. So my concern is the parking situation during this construction. It's already limited drastically, because a lot of the people don't have multiple cars, they don't park in their garage. So, if I have guests coming, it's almost impossible for them to find parking. So that's a major concern I have. I also work from home, and the architect mentioned jackhammering, so I was just wondering how soon that's going to start, because if that's the case, I may have to make accommodations and maybe go back to the office, because I'm on client calls all day, and I don't think I can have that level of noise. And my office is immediately facing this property, 757. And the hours, I just wanted to make sure, is it like Monday through Friday, or is Saturdays also a work day? So that's kind of what I also wanted to clarify.
Yeah, unfortunately, I empathize with you. Construction, noise and hours, that sort of thing isn't within our purview, but staff might be able to assist in letting you know what those hours are and help with that. And then regarding during construction, do you have any feedback regarding the parking during construction as well?
Work hours, that's the easiest one. Work can commence at 7 a.m. and needs to finish by 7 p.m. And that's Monday through Saturday. No work Sunday, and no work, I think it's federal holidays. So that's the easy one. When does the jackhammering occur? If in fact the project gets approved tonight, the applicant will need to go through the plan check process, and that involves different departments reviewing the project. Once all the issues are resolved, a permit is issued. When a permit is issued, then construction can begin. So there isn't really a timeline that I can give you. The applicant offline can maybe say, we're intending to submit for plan check at a certain time, and we hope to start construction at a certain time, but that's really kind of out of the purview of the city, aside from work hours. Parking on the street, to be honest with you, I am not sure what regulations the city has regarding construction equipment, construction parking on public streets. Certainly if there is like a bin on the street, there are permits for that. But in terms of if I'm the contractor working on the house, I don't believe that the city restricts me from parking on the street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maral Parsegian. Welcome. Please state your name. Even though.
My name is Maral Parsegian. I own the property at 718 Bow Leg, which is right above the project. And my main concern was if they jackhammer into the bedrock, I don't want anything happening to my foundation because I'm right above. And I was concerned about the pool, but after speaking to the architect, it sounds like it's going to be far enough away where it won't affect us. But I just want to make sure that jackhammering and doesn't affect the foundation for our place, that's all.
Right, and building and safety will go through processes where, you know, they do engineer for shoring that appropriately. Yeah. So,
And I
yeah.
assume there won't be any landscaping that will come up really high and block our view. But I'm assuming that's the case.
As conditioned, staff is suggesting a condition on landscape plans to be reviewed and approved by staff. Since this is not a new house, they did not need to provide them as of course, but we are suggesting that we are recommending as a condition that they provide landscape plans that concentrate on landscaping adjacent to the retaining walls. There is no language on landscaping within other areas of the site. I know above the retaining wall, it may just be kind of natural what's there now.
The architect might address that in a rebuttal, possibly.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Thank you. So I may have stated the jackhammering, everybody's. I am not going to be involved in the means and methods of the construction, but the way that it works is that the contractor, the engineer, the soils engineer, myself, we're all going to be reconvening with the city public engineer, and we are going to determine the type of shoring that we're going to need, the removal of. Yes, there may be a jack, but we can definitely control that. My client knows all the neighbors. I will make sure that he will be in contact with them. And we will notify everyone that when the commencement of the work is going to begin. As far as the timeline, hopefully everything goes well tonight. I would probably anticipate somewhere early part of next year, maybe January or February of next year, by the time we're done with the engineering preparation and everything else that we need to do. So probably January or February of next year, the construction will begin. Other than that, I think there was one more thing. As far as
The landscaping and the views.
so the landscaping, the retaining wall, if a landscaping is required, the landscape will go above the retaining wall to kind of cover that. It is on the north side, so definitely it's not going to impact any sun on our part, but on the neighbor's part. But on our part, the more landscaping we put in, the sun that hits it, it's going to create more shadow. But as far as covering that, we are digging into the hill, and the retaining wall is 15 foot tall. The house above is about 47 feet above. So no matter what we plant here, it really is not going to cover the retaining wall on the other side, which is more visible of the person who's going to be living in the house itself. So, and creating landscaping in front of the retaining wall within the base of the retaining wall, that again, it's taken away a very small space that we have as a usable space there. We'll try to kind of utilize however we can. We will bring in a landscape architect and have them give us some opinion on that and how we can address that. But as far as protecting the view of the retaining wall from above, it's going to be somewhat difficult because they're, again, above, we're cutting in and we're lower here. So I don't know how you can cover and it's between
Well, I think their concern was things growing tall.
Yeah, blocking their view.
and
So,
blocking
yeah,
Right,
so that.
I think it was the opposite. It was the neighbor's concern about landscaping growing and blocking her view, her wide view, not necessarily the
low
retaining
deck,
wall.
the lowest deck on the survey that we have, I mean, you can zoom into it and you can see it. The low deck over there versus the new deck that we have is 47 feet difference. So the tallest ficus tree that I can even put in there, it's not even going to get up to the deck level itself. So they're so different. so much of a
Okay,
difference in
it's just not
elevation.
possible.
To
Thank you for
clarify,
the,
you're not proposing any landscaping on the hillside
I
above
am
the
not right
house?
now, no, I'm not planting
I think
any
that was the
trees. But
main
again,
concern.
I'm gonna be,
That would be the key point.
I think that's what Roger and I were gonna be working and trying to figure out what's the appropriate way of landscaping around that, to meet the conditions, so.
thank you.
For staff's sake, we're more concerned about softening, buffering the retaining walls, not
Right.
necessarily planting high
Above, correct.
landscaping.
Okay, are there any callers as well?
There are no callers at this
Okay, well then we'll close the public portion of the hearing and open it up for deliberation. Who would like to start? Okay,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kiesel, thank you, Mr. Milliken. I think this design is very well done. I think you've done a very good job here. I know having your 50% limitation there kind of constricts you a bit, so I can appreciate that and understanding how the roof forms are done. And I actually concur with the applicant that I like that flat gable end for that main part of the facade, as opposed to inserting a hip roof there. I think it is much more consistent with all of the other roof forms. And I think from a compositional standpoint, it works very well. How you've laid out the materials, how you've balanced everything, the windows, the hierarchy of everything, I think it works very well. So kudos to you. I think it's done very well. And the only thing that was kind of a question for me was the amount of light that you have on that facade. I personally prefer to do things more like uplights as opposed to just big sconces on the sides of buildings for the sake of just lighting up, nothing. Now, if you were using it as a patio, maybe I could understand, but if you're really not intending to do that, I think that maybe we could reduce some of that light a bit. But that's really my only critique. Otherwise, I think you've done a very good job, and I fully support the project.
thank you.
Thank you. I do agree. I think you did a really good job with the design for this house. I think it definitely is going to be a good fit for the community. I fully support this project, and I can't wait to see it come alive.
Board Member Simonian?
Thank you. I concur. The design's very well done. I like the farmhouse design. It's fresh. It's true to itself because you've kind of used the steel frame windows, casement windows. You've used the copper downspouts and gutters, etc. And overall, the composition of the design and the hierarchy of the windows and the placement of the windows are very well done. I too have no issues with the gable. Because, looking at sheet A 6.0, where the four renderings are, you get a sense as to how the gable above the stairs is kind of mimicked with what's happening around by the garage. And so from that angle, from that vantage point, certainly works well. In regards to the entry of the house, the way you've integrated the garden wall and then created the kind of flat area to enter, I think ultimately, you're going to end up, I'm sure, using permeable materials, whether those are pavers, whether that's decomposed granite, as you've mentioned, or gravel, plus landscaping. I think a combination thereof will create a very nice subtle way, plus draping some of the landscape down on those garden walls. I think that, in addition to the retaining wall in the back, if landscaping is draping down on it, it certainly will be a very nice way for it to mimic, to cover the wall. I have no issue with the driveway width. I think the orientation of the garage, of how it's almost parallel with the street, in order to have any kind of a meaningful driveway, you would have to have that kind of a wider turn to be able to come in and out of the driveway. And so I don't really have a particular issue with that. I don't think a condition is necessary. Overall, I think it's well done. I support the project. And with some of the minor stuff that we talked about, but I think we could get rid of some of the conditions and support the project and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I think this is a great design. It's very well balanced, and I love how you've brought in the material of the board and batten. This farmhouse aesthetic is really, really nice. And Yeah, I would say I appreciate all the materials that you've used here, and I do agree with my colleagues that the stairwell roof, I actually do like how it is aesthetically, and I think that would be the one condition that I'd remove. But otherwise, staff's conditions, well, the driveway as well. I think you're not wrong in that. The approach would be challenging if you don't have a wider driveway there. I mean, there could be things done with more permeable pavers or surfaces to lighten that. I think that when you work on the landscape plan, perhaps that could be worked on. But I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts too on that driveway approach. I didn't, on that one condition, I didn't
Yeah,
hear-
I concur. I'm fine with removing number 4.
Okay. Yeah, so would anyone like to make a motion, or do we want to hear the different conditions
can,
so far?
I can list the comments. It's pretty
Okay.
easy.
Yeah, thank you.
Number 1, project plan shall be revised to reduce the area of the proposed deck space so that the majority of the front yard contains plant materials. Condition number 2, landscape plans shall be provided for review and approval by staff. These plans shall concentrate on areas adjacent to the proposed retaining walls and shall include drought-tolerant native plants that soften the appearance of these walls and the residents. Do you want me to add language in that condition regarding maybe subbing out some of the driveway with permeable pavers, or just?
No, I think, Madam Chair, on the first condition, which says project plan shall be revised to reduce the area of the proposed deck space so that the majority of the front yard contains plant material and/or permeable material. I think that's the appropriate place to add it.
Okay.
And then the second is landscape. I think that's where we could kind of just talk about using material that drapes over the walls and perhaps avoid taller specimens at the rear,
Okay.
for the neighbor's sake.
Taller specimens above in front of the retaining wall, it would be fine, right? If it fit.
Yes.
Which sounds like they won't want to do because of how narrow the space is, but yes.
Be,
and- yeah,
Right.
Roger,
Either or.
I would strike the calling it a proposed deck space because the architect made it clear it's not intended that
Okay.
way.
I'm sorry, so just revised plans, project plans shall be revised so that the majority of the front yard contains plant material
And permeable material.
and permeable. yeah.
And/or permeable.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So I will do that. We are eliminating condition 3 and 4. And then the only other question I had was, there was a little bit of discussion on the lighting at the front facade. Is there consensus about that? The front elevation is up.
I mean, I just think that I can understand the one on the balcony on the second floor and perhaps the one by the entryway area, but the two on the brick facade section, I think is maybe a little excessive, so.
I agree. That makes sense to me. Is that the consensus amongst, just to narrow down a couple lights,
Yeah.
essentially? More specifically, the two.
Substitute two, ground lights and
Ground
stuff like
lights,
that.
yeah. I concur with that as well.
Okay, so maintain the lighting
Just
at balcony and front entry.
correct. And then up lights at the right-hand corner.
Eliminate others, and
Right.
then up lighting is okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so that, I didn't have any other discussion points written down.
That sounds great. Would anyone like to
I'll
make a
move
motion?
to approve the project with the stated conditions.
Great,
Second.
great, thank you.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with the, with 3 conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Simonian?
Yes?
Mr. Kaskanian?
Yes.
Mr. Welsh?
Yes.
And Ms. Lockroff?
Yes.
Great. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Shall we take a quick break? Thank you.
You ready?
Okay.
All right. Good evening yet again. Madam Chair, members of the Design Review Board. The last case this evening is case number 593-2022. It is a review of a proposal to construct a new two-story, 3,802 square foot single-family house and an attached three-car garage. The residence is proposed on the north side of Kirkham Drive and located on a 19,000 square foot lot, which is zoned R1R with a floor area ratio District 3. There is an existing 2,600 square foot house currently located on the lot with an attached garage built in 1974. That house will be demolished as part of the project. However, the existing swimming pool on the site will remain. So we have a location map here. The site is outlined in red. Aerial view, you can see the existing house, which will be demolished. Excuse me, the existing pool, which will remain. Street view of the existing house. Site plan of the proposed residence. Front elevation. This is the rear elevation, and then the two side elevations. Some renderings. The first floor floor plan. Second floor floor plan. Roof plan. Some section drawings, and at the top of this screen shows how the proposed house will relate to the adjacent houses. The street does slope up. Landscape plans, materials, and then conditions. I will go back to my staff report. All right, the project site planning is acceptable regarding the proposed project, although alterations to the landscape plan are recommended. The site planning of the proposed project is really very similar to the existing situation. The existing house is located on a already graded pad. The proposed house will be located on that same pad. The garage is street facing, existing. Most of the homes in the area have that street facing garage. The proposed residence will have a street facing garage. A number of changes are recommended to the landscape plans to make the project more consistent with the Hillside Design Guidelines. I'm going to flip back to the landscape plans since I'm talking about that. So let me go over the suggested changes to you. The first, to soften the appearance of the house from the street and increase the permeable surface area and landscaping, staff is suggesting that the front walkway leading to the front door should be reduced in width to no wider than the front door, with the two side lights that are also proposed on either side of the door. And that is, you can see that on the bottom portion of the landscape plans. There are also some views I'll go back to that show the width of the walkway leading up to the front door. Staff also recommends adding 2 shade trees to the front yard to provide some shade to this south-facing yard. Currently, there are a number of palm trees. Staff would like to see the shade trees both for shade as well as to sort of soften the appearance of the house. Additionally, trailing plants we are recommending to be added to the landscape plans adjacent to the proposed retaining walls and the planter walls. And then finally, staff suggests amending the landscape plans in the rear yard to a more naturalistic form, which is consistent with the Hillside Design Guidelines. I go into that more in the staff report, but the landscape plans above the house are, fairly hedge-like, and the hillside design guidelines really suggest something in a more naturalistic form. So there are a number of alterations to the design of the proposed residence that staff feels would reduce the mass and scale of the project and allow it to be more consistent with the hillside design guidelines. Let me go to the elevations. So this is the front elevation, and there are a menu of different ideas that staff is suggesting that the applicant do or consider. And staff believes this is particularly important given that the house is much larger than the nearby houses in the neighborhood. It's also a relatively intact 1970s subdivision. So, this house will be very different from model A, B, and C that are up and down the house, up and down the street. So some of the changes that staff is suggesting the applicants explore include varying the plane of the second floor facade. The front facade is up on the screen now, and the second floor is set back from the first floor, which is addresses the hillside design guidelines, addresses what we want to see, but that second floor front facade is all in line. And one of the things that staff is suggesting is it might be helpful to vary the sort of the depth of the setback on the second floor.
And you're referring to the right side, the white side? Because I think the left side is stepped back, right? So it's just the right side?
Well, if you look, let's go to the floor plan. If you look at the floor plan, the bottom part is the front elevation. It's all in one line, as opposed to maybe recessing the new bedroom 3 or recessing bedroom 1, different setback dimensions.
I see.
That's one of the things that we're suggesting to look at.
But there's an architectural element on the right-hand side that
Correct.
extends out from that, which is not really
Correct.
reflected on these plans, correct?
That's what I was.
Yeah, it's not reflected on those plans, and actually, that was one of the suggestions. Well, that's the next one I was going to go over. Restudying that architectural feature, I wasn't sure what to call it, but the architectural feature in the front, what you just, you can see it up on the renderings. While it does provide some dimension and some varying, it's pretty heavy. It's more commercial or multifamily residential oriented. And staff is suggesting restudying that feature as a means to reduce the mass and scale. The third suggestion was restudy the sizes, locations, patterns of windows. The fourth suggestion was adding vertically oriented elements to the facade design. It's fairly horizontally oriented, so some verticality may assist in just breaking up the mass a bit. The next suggestion was pushing the second floor back at the front elevation into the double height ceiling at the living room. And let me go back to the floor plan and show you, show you what I mean. So this is the second floor plan. Behind bedroom 3 in the staircase, there's an area that's open to below. So on the first floor, there's a large living room at that location, and that's a double height room. Staff is suggesting potentially to shift part of the second floor living space back over that area, just again, to provide some varying setback and to reduce the mass of the proposed house.
Are you more referring, Mr. Kiesel, to kind of the entry area? So you're saying limited to kind of, is the intent to kind of focus that shifting on the open to below portion, which is just where the stairs are?
I wasn't necessarily specific to that, but I mean, shifting more of the second floor living space back to that open to below area, either simply sliding it back or.
You're talking about the rear
Talking
one?
about the rear, yeah.
Right.
I see.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I thought you were talking about the front. I see.
right. It's the rear open to below.
Okay.
Yeah. Another suggestion was to reference building elements from the surrounding neighborhood pattern. As I mentioned before, the track was developed in the mid-1970s, and it's pretty intact still. It's not necessarily, I don't want to say high design, but there are some weird model homes that they built at that time. So I would hesitate to say mimic a particular model, but look at some of the features of that tract and integrate them into the existing house as a means to reduce mass, reduce scale, and provide a better transition between the proposed residence and the neighborhood. And then finally, the last suggestion was incorporating sloped roofs into the design. And by that, I don't mean making the whole house a sloped roof, but maybe incorporating some sloped roofs into the design. The surrounding neighborhood has sloped roofs. There are particular houses that have kind of a mansard flat roof. So a flat roof design wouldn't be totally foreign in the neighborhood, but I think potentially adding some sloped roof areas to the house may help in the mass and scale in the transition department. So just like a menu of suggestions. So finally, design and detailing for the proposed project is appropriate. The front door is prominent without being monumental. I'll go to the elevations there. There's the front elevation again. The trellis element above the entry really assists in highlighting this area, but highlighting it in a, an appropriate, non-monumental way. The proposed materials are quality materials. They include smooth stucco, black natural stone, ipe wood siding, and fiberglass windows. So staff is recommending approval of the project with the two conditions contained in the staff report. Let me go over them with you. The first one is that the landscape plan shall be amended to include the reduction of hardscape at the front walkway, addition of 2 shade trees within the front yard and trailing plants adjacent to retaining walls and planters, and a more naturalistic design of the rear yard behind the retaining walls. Revised landscape plans shall be reviewed and approved by staff. The second condition was the design of the residence shall be altered to reduce its massing and scale and approve its scale and proportion as it relates to the surrounding neighborhood. These design changes could include varying the planes of the second floor street facade, eliminating the architectural feature above the front entry on the second level, or restudying it, restudying the window location size pattern, incorporating vertically oriented elements into the design, pushing the second floor back above the double height living room, referencing building elements of the surrounding neighborhood, and then finally adding sloped roofs. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions?
Could you speak to the retaining wall in the backyard and what's envisioned there? Because there was no real site section shown to show how that's being done. There was like an existing retaining wall that's there, which looks like it's going to be either kept partially or removed, and then a new retaining wall dug in further back up to 15 feet in height.
Yeah.
And then the landscape plan shows that whole area that's being sort of added to the backyard is really just landscape area. So I just want, maybe I just ask the applicant about that. Okay. All right, so I'll defer that to when the applicant speaks, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Actually,
Okay.
sorry, one more thing. You all should have received a list of neighbors in support of the project.
Correct. That was received.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for noting that. Okay. Then I would like to, if there are no other questions, call the applicant forward. Please state your name. Welcome.
Savan Benrian, good evening, board members. Thank you for having us today. We're excited to present this project that's been going on for like a couple of years already. I brought some elevations that mounted on board that are a little bigger so you guys can see it, because those weren't very clear, and the material board, so I'll pass those
Thank you.
around. I want to start by thanking staff for working hard on this project, especially Roger. And I'll wait for a second until he's.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start by clarifying a couple things. I totally agree with staff condition about the front elevation if you only look at the rendering, because the rendering doesn't do the project justice. I think we either have something wrong in that rendering, or it's either maybe the angle that it's taken, it throws it off. But if you look at the elevations, it clarifies that the mass and the scale of whatever is proposed is not out of line. The highest part of this house is at 25 feet, so way below the maximum. And most of the house is at 21 and change, so way lower than what you're allowed to do. So I can speak for the owner, and he'll speak for himself as well. He's a resident of Glendale for a very long time, and they love this property. He's a builder, designs most of his stuff. He builds very fancy homes in various cities, but he is in love with Glendale and wouldn't go anywhere. And this is the house that he wants to raise his family in. So he's not interested in building anything crazy or anything big. Just to clarify, so in terms of the shapes, if you look at that front feature, it's kind of like a block that goes from the front to the back, and it's a completely separate volume. There isn't much you can do over there, because the reason we raised it a little bit just to break up the mass. So if you bring it down or you make it lower, that's actually going to make the mass seems larger than what it is. So the other part is, it's funny to hear about the sloped roof. Our initial design had a sloped roof over that area. And with 1,000 back and forth with staff, we were sent in this direction. So now to hear like do sloped roof, it was I should have brought the sloped roof design so you guys can take a look at that. But anyhow, I don't think we're going back to sloped roof. This is what we're proposing, and this is what we're gonna go with. Other than that, what else I wanna? Oh, landscape. Landscape plan is not very accurate, so it's going to be revised, and we'll revise it and submit it to staff. I noticed that this is like from an older proposal. There is a proposed retaining wall that's about 14 that Mr. Walsh brought up. The idea was to that pool is going to go away, and there's going to be a new pool proposed under a different application that's going to get pushed a little bit, because right now the way the house is working is you're right there. You step outside, you're touching the pool. So we need just to push it back a little bit. So that's the reason for that retaining wall. It's it varies between 10 feet to like 14.6 or 15 feet. Behind the house, completely blocked away, because as you walk to the house, it's a very steep hill, so you barely see the house. Once you get to the house, when you see the build proposal, you're not going to see the retaining wall. So it's going to be completely screened. The neighborhood, we've sent a letter. Jack is really a good friend with most of them, so they're all excited. They've been part of the process. They've seen the design. They've seen the different things. Most of them are in support. I think there were 2 houses that didn't sign the petition in that 300 or 400 foot radius, and the reason for that was we didn't know who the owners. The houses were recently sold, but everybody else is on board and in support. What else I was going to say? So the neighborhood has multiple homes in that tract that has flat roofs, and some of them are like very weird 70s look. So I'm not sure what kind of features we're going to be able to extract from that. But other than that, the verticality also comment, I don't know. I think it's maybe appropriate in a different setting, but in this setting, I think a vertical element might give the indication of a taller or adds even more mass, which is the exact opposite of the design guidelines. But I think that's mostly it, and I'll have the owner just talk for a couple minutes, and then if you guys have any questions, I can answer them.
Do we have any questions?
Just a quick question, Selvan. Is it the garage door going to be white or is it black?
The garage door is going to be the glass, the
black one that's right here?
Yeah.
The wood material, is it going to be the same on the left-hand side of the second floor as well as within the architectural sort of element there? Because they look a different color in the rendering, so it's hard.
It should be the same. We're wrapping it around.
It should be the same, okay.
Wrapping it around, and everything that he's picked, he's very particular with his material. Everything he's picked is very high and very good quality material.
One of the suggestions, of Mr. Kiesel was some vertical elements, and I note on the architectural, I'll just call it the element there. On the rear side, you've got 3 vertical windows there, but on the front, you've got 3 different shaped, windows, 2 of which look square. Would it make sense to replicate that to be consistent?
We could. The only problem with that was we had a little bit more difficult time in the front, because in the front you have the bedrooms. You have the foyer as you enter, and then you have the bedrooms, and we had to figure out a way to do the windows in an even manner.
But those aren't operable windows.
No,
those are fixed. Right? Okay.
Fixed windows. Yeah, but we can. That's not a big change, so we can replicate what we did on the back, if that's where the board wants to go.
And for his other conditions about, maybe trying to vary up that mass.
That mass is varied already. So if you look at the rendering, which is a bad rendering based on the angle, that whole volume is pushed. They're not on the same plane. So on the elevation, on the floor plan, you won't see it, but you'll see it in the rendering.
What about the sections? Can we? I think it's shown.
Yeah, over here you can see. You see that where the wood element coming on the second floor, and that front mass, that's pushed back. Oh, wow. So that part, the garage and the second floor, none of them are on the same plane.
Well, the window wall is on the same plane, but I think the outline element.
Exactly, the outline element is not.
Which wall is set back? The brown one, the black one, or the white one?
The brown one.
The brown one's in the same plane, and then the white framing element
projects and
comes forward.
But it is set back from the first floor.
From the black portion.
Correct.
Correct.
When the framing element, the first floor has a notch, and the framing element looks like it comes and covers that notch, so that there's a covered entry and,
Correct.
okay.
So this is the second floor plan. And what you don't see is that projecting architectural element that does come forward from the facade of the second floor.
And if you could show the
Yes.
first floor,
I believe the sections are very helpful, I find.
yeah, so the bedroom actually comes, so just the framing element is covering that area at the front, Seven?
Yes.
I think the second floor is right here, correct?
Somewhere there, yeah.
I'm sorry, I think
No, go ahead.
Board Member
Go ahead.
Walsh is still.
No, go ahead.
So my question is that, Mr. Bellion, can you come up and just with your finger draw, kind of come across with your finger as to where the second floor line is in relation to the first? No, let's go back. Yeah, stay at this floor plan.
able to like put them next to each other?
No. Too bad we don't have a pointer.
You could just do it with your finger so I understand, because I think I know where it is, but I'd like to get a.
Yeah, so.
You know what, actually, if, GTV is requesting if you could use the mouse that Roger has.
Oh, okay.
Ah.
So if you can use,
I can do that.
Perfect.
and then that way you can show us on
Stay at the lectern.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, from the,
but you have to stay
Microphone.
lectern because you have to speak into the microphone.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm making your life difficult right now.
Can you go to the second floor, please? To the oh,
You've got
I'm the
control.
one I'm the one who's controlling it. Okay. So that's the first floor and that's the second floor. So the second floor, let's go back to, I wanted to go to this. Yeah. So the second floor is set back from the garage wall. So if you look at the garage wall, the second floor line is going to be somewhere here.
That's what I thought.
so a couple feet, essentially? Okay.
Yes.
It looked to me like it was more in line with that closet wall, so about 6 foot back.
Even more significant.
Yeah.
You can sort of reference
Yeah.
why that is.
Right. Okay.
The reason for that is to create that the entry and the stairs, basically.
Well, let's stick with the question at hand, just so I understand, because if we just stay here, it seems as though the second floor, not it seems, it is, it has one plane, which more or less matches and is aligned with the bedroom number 3 wall.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you go to the first floor, on the right side, where you have the double doors, on the right side, where you have the double doors,
Yes, it's recessed back.
so those double doors are in line with the second floor.
Correct.
No, I think that they're a little ahead of it. I think that the second floor is stepped back even a little bit more than that.
The second floor goes back just a tiny bit more. Correct.
Okay. So, but let's say it goes back and it's kind of where the door swings end, right? And then it goes all the way across.
Correct.
So it is set back in the plane and then also in volume.
Correct.
Understood. Now, can you go to the sections, which is, I think sheet A11?
I don't know that the sections are
They're,
on the.
they're not on the presentation.
So in our sheet A11,
Oh, right here. There's some.
so the
There are some.
bottom, let's say the bottom right side, well, we have section, in our sheet A11, there's a section 2 and a 4. These guys. And then there, the second floor, which is bedroom number 3, is set back from
Correct.
the below. So there is that, whatever, 2 or 3 feet that's set back. Okay.
Feature as well. Oops, sorry, my mic was off, but I
Yeah,
was saying
right
beyond
here.
that, there's the architectural feature in addition to that. Right.
Correct.
And I think the depth of the setback of the second floor corresponds to the difference between the garage facade and the second floor. I don't think it's not, in that section, it looks maybe 2.5 or 3 feet. It's not super deep. So,
Yeah, I think they line up.
yeah, they do line up. And then the frame projects, and then
Okay.
just in the rendering, it looks like the frame then aligns with the first floor wall.
The rendering is.
The rendering is off.
messed up,
Angle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I had is, on the material boards, it's indicated Fleetwood windows, is that
And
really
it's
what's?
aluminum, not fiberglass.
So Fleetwood is being used throughout, is that
So
the?
Fleetwood, aluminum, inside and outside
And-
throughout the entire project. Yes.
Oh, okay, and then all the siding is the IPA wood?
In some areas that, and in other areas it's the black natural stone.
But all the wood siding is IPA?
Yes.
And then the stone
We
material?
wanted to keep it consistent.
Makes sense. And then the stone material that was just presented, what you passed around, is that the material of the retaining wall in the back, the stone veneer?
The stone veneer, that's for the retaining wall.
I see. Can I see? Yeah. Thank you. I have no more questions at the moment. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one simple question regarding, we have the proposed west elevation, and I just was noting that the treatment, the material treatment's slightly different on the west elevation, and I was just wanting to.
It should be the same.
Okay. So there would be a darker color on the base, or, so if you, can you pull up the west?
Can you go to that elevation? I don't remember.
Billy, can you help me? The mouse is.
On our sheet, it's A10, but I believe it was different on the presentation.
Maybe we give the mouse back to Mr. Kiesel.
I did.
I have
It's-
it.
It's with them.
He froze it.
That's why it's frozen.
Roger the Iceman Kiesel.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what's happening there is the stucco box framing element that is then wrapping across the west side,
Okay.
I think.
I need to see. I don't know exactly which part.
I'm sorry, you were referring to the west elevation?
Correct. Oh, I see. So it's the box.
That's right. The box dies into
So I was
it.
just noting that the base, and all the
Yeah.
other elevations, the base was a different color,
Correct.
but that's because the box
Yes.
is being highlighted.
But the second floor, I don't, at the first floor also, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So Jay answered it correctly.
Yeah, and I just wanted to do a follow-up on that, the retaining wall at the back. So again, the retaining wall would be coming
It's-
right
it's-
down
it-
to the
it's
grade
getting-
of the current patio, all the way down?
Correct.
To make a larger patio area
To make
where
it
you're
larger
going to
so
be
we can
pushing
push
the
the
pool
pool.
into it? Okay.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify.
Correct.
Okay.
And we had the civil engineer do the calculations. There's about like, between the side and the back and everything, there's about like 200 to 300 cubic yard worth of grading.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. Regarding the stair width at the front, I just wanted to hear your justification for the width, and if there was any reason for the way it was
The stairs in
designed.
the front, he wanted, I don't know if it's, probably it's not very clear, he wanted to do a water feature with like stepping stones over it. So just to give it, it just needed to be a little wide to give it some significance, but it's not the end of the world.
It's not critical.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
no problem.
Okay. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'd like to call the owner forward. Jack Bakian. Welcome. Please say your name.
My name is Jack Bacon, and I'm the owner of 3223 Kirkham Drive. And I don't know where to start with this project. I'm a developer myself, and I develop a lot of custom-made houses, multi-million-dollar houses, and made a lot of people be happy where they live and buy new houses and all that stuff, but I just can't get my house to be what I want. And we love Glendale. My wife doesn't want to go anywhere else but Glendale. And I told her that it's going to be very difficult. She goes, no, I want Glendale. We can't find anything ready-made. So we purchased this house. It's been more than 4.5 years. And I told her I'll make something nice so we can raise our kids. And she goes, okay. So we just purchased this house, and it's been going out for almost 3 years now. And I really like your support to get this project done. And if there's any minor changes, we'll be happy to go ahead and do so. But it took us a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of stress, a lot of changes, financial changes. Because when we bought it, we were thinking about, okay, we're going to go ahead and start the project within a year and a half. And it's been almost 4 years. We still haven't even started the project. My third kid was born, and I want to see if it's possible for us to go ahead and move the project so we can move on, and we're just tired. We just want to go ahead and move forward and just get it done and start building so we could, live. In construction standpoint, the sidings are not going to be Ipe. It's going to be new take wood, which is a composite wood, because Ipe is, I don't want to do no maintenance on that stuff. It's a plastic and it's composite, and that's what we're going to do with the siding. I'm not sure in regards to the front interest what's the depth, but that doesn't really matter. We could narrow it or make it bigger and all that stuff. In regards to the trailers, if that needs to be changed or make it smaller or bigger, that's not a problem for us either. What else I want to say? Yeah, that's about it. I just want your support, really. My wife and I will appreciate to get the support to get this done. And if there's anything that we can work with, just want to work with it with Roger and in a fast manner if it's possible, because it's been going on for such a long time. And get it done and just move forward. We don't want to go back and forth again so many times. So if you could prove this, I'll really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I actually had a question for the owner. Hi, good evening. And thank you for sharing all that, and we certainly feel for you. I mean, that's a long time, and, with COVID and everything, things really slowed down everywhere with a lot of the cities. And that sounds like you were going right through the thick of it, right? All that.
I think so, yeah. But it's after the COVID too. It's been a long process. But again, I don't blame him, because he has probably other projects from prior to COVID, and it was just on hold and all that stuff. But yes, it's been almost 3 years just when we submitted. I mean, we bought the house 4 years ago.
Our intent is to try to help and try to move it along.
Please.
We certainly understand and feel your pain, especially with children being born, the ability to want to get something going and something built.
Well, I have 3 pipes burst inside the house already. And if you come and see inside the house, I cannot repipe the house anymore because it's underneath the slab. I need to break the whole slab in order to do that. And if you see the house, you will see literally hot and cold pipes running inside my living room, just like this, in order for me just to survive, to see what I'm going to do. And it's the 3rd time it happened. So I'm just want to get it over with and start, or else I'm just going to sell it and just, I don't know what I'm going to do.
That's an interesting conversation point when you have people over there. Like the contractor has pipes.
It is. You'll see. Yes, we have
makes me light of it, because I could tell you're frustrated.
We have pipes going around outside, inside the house, literally. I mean, I wish I would have brought pictures.
I actually was interested in the entry feature. That's the only reason I called you back. Was it's kind of interesting with the water.
That's my trademark. Every house I build, I do some kind of a water feature in the front.
I see it. And so is the idea to kind of have a floating water and then these kind of floating steps, concrete steps?
Correct.
I see. It's quite nice. Interesting.
Well, in this situation, the vertical one we could eliminate. We could go just straight in and make it narrowed. I mean, that's up to the design. We could work that out. It's not a
But
big
that's the
deal.
feature.
Yeah, I would like to have, when you're walking on the stepping stone entering the house, and there's water feature flowing either on the bridge or a stepping stone, either or.
Understood. I just was going to ask about that.
If that's okay, I mean,
Seems
you gotta
nice, but
understand,
yeah,
I'm a
thank you.
developer and I like good ideas. I would like to have something nice for my house, for my clients or my friends when come, then, the This is Jack, you know, yes. If that's okay with the board and with the city in order for me to do something like that. I haven't seen it in Glendale. And all the houses around us, I know Roger told, they are all flat roofs, and the design is, the reason we choose this design, I wanted totally something else. I wanted complete modern, complete, I mean, totally something with the elevation going up and down and some kind of fixtures in the front, all that stuff. And someone told me, you can't do that. So we went around the block and we looked at the houses, and most of the houses, they're all flat roofs. They're all pretty much this way. They're all this way. This is the garage and this is the house. This is the garage and this is the house. And that's how we came up with this kind of an idea to have a house that matching the street. I think it's a good design, and I think we're set on it. And if you guys could, appreciate if you could support us in this project. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any callers? Okay. Well, since there are no callers, we'll close the public portion and open it up for deliberation. Mr. Simonian, would you like to start?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come out, and thank you for reaching out to your neighbors. That's always a good place to start, is to reach out. And when you have no callers coming in, that's always a good sign that there is an agreement amongst the close neighbors. And thank you for taking the time, and we did get that, so thank you. You know, when I visited the property, I noticed the existing kind of suburban feel of it. In fact, there's this awkward design to the right of the house, which has that, I don't even know how to describe it, but then there's the same design across the street. And it's a recurring theme. It's got a flat facade and this funky window. It's bizarre. But there's a lot of, next door is a flat roof, across the street are flat roofs. And so I actually thought it was interesting the way they had worked in the flat roof motif into this, you know, modern design. And so language-wise, in regards to the shapes and the sizes and the overall feel of it, I think it's successful. I had a lot of questions about the renderings because I could tell the renderings weren't quite jiving with or matching the elevations, and that, thank you for taking the time to address those, and thank you for bringing them, because I feel as though the elevations actually depict the intent and spirit of the design better than the renderings. And I support the materials and the language of the design, the proportionality of the windows. Of course, we could talk a little bit about, as Board Member Welsh brought up, you know, the difference between the front windows and the rear windows of the white cube. In fact, you know, maybe the rear vertical ones are more successful than the front ones. But that's minor. In regard to the overall shape and feel of the mass, the way it's being set back, the use of the materials, the interesting water feature in the front, which I haven't seen in Glendale. We've certainly seen it in these mid-century homes, especially with the Japanese influence. But it's interesting how someone's taken the time to actually integrate that into an entrance, and I do support that. I think those kind of artistic moves should be encouraged. In regards to the width, I don't know about the exact size, but in general, I think that's the right direction, and I would imagine if someone's going to spend the time to do it, they're going to do it right. I don't really have, I don't share the, I guess I'm not as strongly share condition, you know, I don't strongly agree with the numerous items in condition number 2. I mean, it says the design changes should include varying the planes of the second floor street facade, and I kind of, based on what we've discussed, I already feel as though that's there. Eliminating the architectural feature above the front entry on the second level, I actually thought that the entry feature, the trellis, help break up the mass of the white portion of the facade. Now, whether it should get smaller, that's something we could discuss. But overall, the way it's got a black frame to it with the rafters inside, I thought was interesting. The third point was restarting the window location, sizes, pattern. I do think that we could maybe work on the white cube in the front and back as far as making those more in line with one another, but overall, I didn't see an overarching issue. Incorporating vertical oriented elements in the design, I do see how if it's vertical, like it is in the rear of the white cube, if that's transferred in the front, that could make sense, but I'm not sure if that's what staff was referring to. I don't see a need to push back, and, you know, overall, I think the flat portion of the roof, as outlined on the last item, is in line with some of the neighboring stuff. So I feel as though it's a fresh design. I wouldn't call it an ultra-modern home, but I would certainly say it is modern and contemporary, but it's done in a nice way, and it's thought out. I think the materials are of high end. So I support the project, and I don't feel as though, based on some of what I'm hearing, especially from the ownership point of view of how long it's taken, that, you know, we should, I don't support a redesign of this. I think some tweaks, as we've talked about, maybe the size of the trellis, maybe the verticality of the windows as it relates to the front and back. Those are some of the items I would recommend, but in regards to supporting the project, I do support it. So those were my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I pretty much concur exactly with Board Member Simonian. One other interesting feature I'll call out is this skylight that goes above from the roof all the way down to the kitchen, you know, cutting through, you know, a cavity in the master bedroom suite there, to bring more natural light into that kitchen, I think is really nice. I don't know whether you're going to have any windows on the second floor to bring some of that light there too, but I think that will really make that kitchen a showpiece. Generally, like I said, I concur. I think the only real element that really was a little jarring for me was those windows at the front. And I think if we can concur and reach consensus on just replicating how you've done it at the rear, I think it works very well there. I like how that whole rear element of that architectural cube thing sort of juts out, you know, really prominently in the back. It's not prominent to anybody else, but it really creates a statement in the backyard. So I think that really is where the design, to me, works best. So that would be the only condition that I would want to throw on this. I do agree with the landscaping thing. That walkway at the front is a little wide. I think we should narrow that down a bit, you know. But, you know, it can certainly open up at the house with your water feature. I didn't have a problem with the trellis above the front door. I think the scaling of it was fine. I think it does help break up the mass. So those are my thoughts. I'm definitely in support of moving the project forward. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with my fellow board members. The design of the house is really nice. The waterway in the front, I agree. I think that is definitely a nice little kick to the house, something you don't see often. I actually grew up in a very heavily dominated Japanese community in Gardena, so I did see that a lot over there, but yeah, it's good to see stuff like this here as well. But yeah, overall, I support this project, and I can't wait to drive by and see it.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur. I agree with condition 1 in terms of the landscaping, but I think that the second condition, I do like the flat roofs, and I think that for some, the guidelines also encourage us to look at having variety in neighborhoods. And I think that this is a really, it will bring an interesting design. And I also appreciate you going to all of your neighbors. I think that it does speak volumes that they almost everyone signed that And I agree with the choice of materials. I would caution, I actually have a question for staff regarding the Fleetwood windows. I know Title 24 code changed at the beginning of this year, and a lot of these doors and windows aren't possible anymore, but I don't know if Title 24, I was just going to caution the applicant in terms of being able to use the Fleetwood doors and windows. If is it based on application date that they're held to those codes, or for building? I just
Yeah, it's kind of out of
Yeah.
our purview. It's building and
Right.
safety that would look at
It-
that,
it
but
is, yeah.
I would assume that they would need to comply with the building codes in effect at the time they submitted for plan check.
a while ago. Okay, so then it should be fine. It's just at the beginning of this year.
Well, they have not submitted for plan
Oh,
check.
got it. They
It's
didn't do
plan
it.
check.
That's true.
Board
Yeah.
Member Lockhart, based on your experience, if they were fiberglass Fleetwood, let's say.
that would be
That
fine.
would pass.
Right,
So maybe we
correct.
could build in a,
Yeah, alternate for fiberglass. That's what I was gonna say, is to give them that flexibility, because Fleetwood's changing their line to meet these new codes. So that's, yeah, I think that would be important to include. Yeah, and I do like this kind of white cube feature coming out. I do appreciate that helps to break up the mass, and I appreciate the use of materials overall, and I support this project. So I think that we sounds like we're all, and I agree with the windows. I think that should be a condition that Board Member Welsh mentioned. And I'm trying to think if there are any, the pathway in the front. I did have a thought on that, just if they really like the width. If it was more permeable, I just want to throw that out to the board, like say there are pavers that are closer to the house. If it was more pavers with more greenery between them, if it would be more appealing, if there were more, or grass or something like that, just so that it wasn't so much
hardscape.
concrete and hardscape. I just wanted to see if maybe we could adjust how that's said, so that if it's, more landscaping is included into those steps.
I'm fine with that.
Either that or a narrower path. Yeah. And yeah, no, I think that's it. Would you mind if anyone else doesn't have any other conditions? Do you mind reading back the ones that we have come to?
Sure. Well, actually, let me, the first one regarding the landscaping. I think we have, I'll stop where I want to stop and then ask you questions. The landscape plan shall be amended to include a reduction in the hardscape or more permeable surface area at the front walkway. Is that sort of where you're going with that?
Well, I think it's on either narrow the hardscape walkway or keep the width with the incorporation of landscape.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
maybe
give
I
me-
didn't say it correctly. I think that's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Okay. Any thought about the addition of two shade trees in the front yard?
That'd be great. I'm always, yeah.
Do we
I
have
think the more-
consensus about that?
That's fine.
Okay. Trailing plants adjacent to retaining walls and planter walls. Concurrence with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then a more naturalistic design at the rear yard behind that retaining wall.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, so that condition will remain the same aside from the caveat that permeable surface can be added to that walkway in the front.
Right, correct.
Okay, and then the second condition, I'm just going to eliminate and say restudy the windows on the second floor front facade above the entry. Does that capture what you're?
To be consistent with the other,
Okay.
and
The
rear
three,
cube,
the three
rear
tall
cube.
windows at the rear, the same design at the front.
Okay. And that was it.
And that was it. Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would anyone like to
I'll
make a
move
motion?
the project for approval with those conditions.
I'll second it.
Great.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with The two conditions, this will be a roll call. Mr. Welsh,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Mr. Kaskanian,
Yes.
and Ms. Lockroth.
Yes.
Great. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Chair, I move we adjourn,
There's,
Yes.
unless there's
the
another piece of business.
microphone works. Does it work? Yes, it is. Okay. Staff comments, though, there will be a meeting. And that will be obviously in 2 weeks. We do have cases. We'll do.
Okay.
The agenda will be posted online with the staff reports. This time, I would also like to introduce our senior planner, Vista Azadi, who will be taking over the Design Review Board as staff liaison, in addition with Ms. Milka Toledo, also a senior planner. And so it is my pleasure to introduce her this evening, and Milka Toledo will be here at the next meeting, so.
Welcome. Yeah. It's
And we must
exciting.
celebrate Vilya Zematitis for her years of service.
Yes, thank you so much.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you
It's nice
so
to be
much.
celebrating my birthday with all of you, but no, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
There's a motion to adjourn.
to adjourn.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.